Imagine a Michelin star chef finishing up this just brutal, chaotic Friday night dinner rush.
Right, the absolute peak of the week.
Exactly. They've spent the last, I don't know, 6 hours improvising, tweaking recipes on the fly because they're missing ingredients, just pulling off these culinary miracles under immense pressure.
Yeah.
But then when the shift is over, instead of saving those brilliant recipe tweaks, they just scrape all those scribbled notes right into the garbage along with the leftover grease.
Oh, that's such a good analogy, because it really is the defining tragedy of the modern technical workforce.
Right. If you work anywhere near the technical or operational trenches of a company, you do this every single Friday.
You do. You spend your days, and honestly, often your nights, putting out these massive operational fires. You patch the vulnerability, you restore the server, you save the company thousands of dollars in downtime.
And your reward for that intense burst of problem solving.
The Jira ticket gets closed.
The Jira ticket gets closed, the Slack thread gets buried.
Exactly. The actual value of that experience just completely evaporates.
Well, the effort stays with you, right, in the form of burnout.
Yes, definitely.
But the strategic value vanishes. And that is exactly what we are tackling in today's deep dive.
It's a huge problem.
It is. So we are looking at a stack of sources today that outline this fascinating architectural system. It's known as the Griot Engine.
The Griot Engine, yeah.
And our mission today is to figure out how you, the listener, can stop letting your operational chaos just disappear into the void. We're going to explore how to mathematically transmute that raw, everyday technical friction into tangible career leverage.
Which is something everyone wants, right?
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this because the sources use some incredibly dense terminology right out of the gate. So what is the core premise we're dealing with here?
So the foundational concept driving this whole system is a framework called Wisdom Internalization and Externalization, or WIE for short.
WIE, got it.
Yeah. And in almost every technical environment, the default expectation is just that you build a system and then you defend that system.
Keep the lights on. Right, keep the lights on, that's it. But WIE completely flips that paradigm. It argues that instead of just defending the perimeter, you need to be actively harvesting the byproducts of your defense.
Harvesting the byproducts. So realizing that your daily operational friction is actually like the most valuable raw material you possess.
Exactly, it's an asset.
And the sources specifically refer to this raw material using terms like P0 intuitive hits and P6 postmortems.
Right, which sounds very clinical.
It does. And for anyone listening who isn't currently living inside an IT ticketing system, a P0 is your priority zero emergency. That's the 2 a.m. pager alarm when their entire database goes down.
Pure panic.
Pure panic. And a P6 is your low-level routine maintenance note. The text calls all of this raw, chaotic operational energy.
Yeah.
And if we return to that kitchen analogy from earlier, this is the grease. This is the mess.
And the Griot Engine is the system designed to capture that grease and convert it into what the text calls sovereign capital.
Sovereign capital.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a corporate buzzword. It does, but it's not. It's actually a mathematical concept in this framework. It's the codified wisdom that you actually own as an individual.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. The sources suggest that under this WIE framework, every single technical action you take should be scored. Scored. They proposed using a metric like a role desirability score, which basically mathematically translates your daily problem solving into actual market leverage.
Market leverage.
Right, which they denote in the text as L's.
Okay, let's ground this in reality for a second, because mathematically translating problem solving into market leverage sounds amazing in a boardroom. But what does it actually look like in practice?
Sure.
Let's invent a scenario. Say you are a mid-level infrastructure engineer. It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, and a critical server crashes because an SSL certificate expired.
A classic nightmare scenario.
Exactly. You wake up, you diagnose the issue, you manually renew the certificate, you write a quick script to prevent it from happening again, and then you just go back to sleep. Normally, you'd wake up the next day, close the ticket, and move on. So how does the Griot Engine change that specific workflow?
What's fascinating here is how the Griot Engine intervenes right at the exact moment of resolution.
Oh, right when you're about to close the ticket.
Yes. It relies on 4 core pillars. And the first one is data capture and telemetry synthesis.
Telemetry synthesis.
Basically, instead of that 2 a.m. server crash just living in your memory in a closed ticket, the system uses a deliberate intake funnel. The text actually calls this the introduction tier, or raw narrative packaging.
Okay, and according to the text, this intake funnel, it basically forces that unstructured, chaotic 2 a.m. data into a very strict, standardized template.
Exactly.
It strips away all the sprawling context, all the frustration, and it demands the answer to 3 incredibly simple questions.
It does 3.
What happened? What did it cost? And what did we learn?
Those 3 questions are the ultimate filter. Because think about it, raw technical logs, like the specific command line prompts you use to renew that SSL certificate, they're completely alienating to anyone outside of the engineering department.
Right. The CEO doesn't care about your bash script.
No, they don't. The intake funnel doesn't want the code.
Yes.
It wants the impact.
So for our 2 a.m. server crash scenario, the engineer doesn't write a novel about the command line. They just write, what happened? Server crashed due to expired SSL.
Yep.
What did it cost? 2 hours of user downtime. What did we learn? We need an automated renewal ping.
Correct. But here's the thing that is just the raw input. The real magic happens in what they call the intermediary tier.
The Vanguard translation layer.
Exactly. This is where the system applies Marketing 5.0 principles. The text mentions using automated orchestration tools, things like NAN or Google Cloud Platform, to route what they call a cleared signal refutation engine mandate.
Okay, let me stop you right there and just push back on some of this terminology.
Fair enough.
Because first of all, for anyone who hasn't used it, NAN is basically a workflow automation tool. Think of it like Zapier, but for heavy-duty engineering tasks. It catches data and moves it around.
Right.
But the text calls this process data alchemy.
It does.
I mean, are we seriously just taking a GCP security log about an expired certificate, running it through a fancy N8N automation filter, and spitting out a pretty Google Doc? Because calling that data alchemy feels a bit like, putting lipstick on a pig. Is that really the mechanism here?
I totally understand the skepticism, but the term data alchemy is actually earned here, I think, because of the mechanism behind the translation. It isn't just reformatting text.
Okay. So
think of the Vanguard translation layer not as a formatter, but as a bilingual diplomat.
A diplomat.
Yeah. It actively strips out the emotional distress and the hyper-specific technical jargon of the engineer, and it repackages the forensic integrity of the event into a high-contrast narrative.
Oh, I see.
It's literally translating the event from the language of the machine into the language of the C-suite.
Meaning it converts the technical fix into financial metrics.
Exactly. Executives, they do not care how elegantly you wrote that bash script to fix the server.
Right.
They care about ROI, risk reduction, and velocity. So the translation layer takes your 3 answers and extrapolates them.
Give me an example of the extrapolation.
Sure. Server crashed becomes mitigated single point of failure risk.
Wow. Okay.
2 hours downtime becomes recovered $15,000 in projected lost revenue.
Yeah.
And need an automated ping becomes implemented automated velocity protocol, reducing future maintenance hours by 12%.
That is wild.
You are transmuting raw operational code into pure business value. That is the alchemy.
Okay, that makes complete sense. You are translating the engineer's pain into the CFO's spreadsheet.
Exactly.
And once we have that translated business value, that high contrast narrative, where does it go? Because the sources map out this visual proof of concept that is, honestly, it's the crux of the whole system.
Yeah, the split.
Right. You take this newly translated narrative, you drop it into a knowledge vault. The text uses the app Obsidian as the primary example, and the data instantly splits into 2 completely different frequencies that travels in 2 opposite directions at the same time.
This bidirectional split is the true engine of the Griot framework.
Yeah.
Let's trace the first path, which is externalization.
Okay.
This is the route explicitly designed to build your market leverage, that ELS we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The Vanguard bidirectional translation engine takes that financially translated narrative and automatically generates a high-fidelity executive artifact.
An artifact.
Yeah, this might be a polished white paper, an executive brief stored in Google Workspace, or even just a brand new metric-driven bullet point for your resume.
The sources refer to these external artifacts using the wildest term. Shamanic ballads.
Yes.
I have to admit, I actually laughed out loud when I read that. It makes it sound so ancient and mystical. But then, right next to it, they call it high-fidelity market weaponization.
Yeah, shamanic ballad is certainly a provocative choice of words by the author. But mechanically, it serves a purpose.
How so?
In ancient tribes, the shaman kept the history and the wisdom of the group alive through storytelling. In a corporate environment, your shamanic ballad is simply the polished, externalized story of your technical conquest told in a language that the market actually values.
Right.
It is external proof that you aren't just a worker. You are a problem solver who actually understands business impact.
It's the difference between a resume that says managed SSL certificates and a resume that says architected automated risk mitigation protocols recovering $15,000 in quarterly revenue.
Exactly.
That is market weaponization.
It really is.
But while that resume bullet is being generated externally, the exact same event is being routed internally. This is the second path.
The internalization route. And this path focuses entirely on feeding what the sources call the O1 source energy log inside your Obsidian vault.
Okay, let's talk about the mechanics of this internal vault. The text calls the process happening here autonomic cognitive adaptation.
Right.
Wait, autonomic. So you are telling me this system learns without human intervention, like a bodily function, like breathing.
Yeah.
Because I really don't buy that. Someone still has to read this data to actually learn from it, right? Software doesn't just make a team smarter just by existing.
You are absolutely right to question the automation aspect. The system doesn't implant knowledge into your brain, matrix style.
Okay, good.
Mechanically, what the Vanguard layer does for the internal route is strip away the specific incident, details the date, the server name, the specific panic of the 2 a.m. call, and it isolates the core strategic principle.
It generalizes it.
Yes, it turns a specific failure into a generalized architectural rule.
So instead of logging server 4 crashed on Tuesday, it logs the principle. Manual certificate renewals represent an unacceptable single point of failure in our infrastructure.
Precisely. And it tags that principle with specific metadata in Obsidian. So the next time the team is planning a new server deployment, they query the O1 source energy log for deployment risks.
Oh, I see.
And because the data has been abstracted into a principle, that lesson instantly surfaces. That is the autonomic cognitive adaptation.
Wow.
The nervous system of the team structurally prevents the friction from happening again. You aren't just fixing errors, you are mathematically ensuring that the team's baseline intelligence increases with every single sprint.
Here's where it gets really interesting. That dual action generating a resume bullet for the external market while simultaneously generating an architectural principle for the internal team, that is what the text calls closing the grand feedback loop.
Exactly.
You are feeding the market and feeding your team at the exact same time from the exact same raw data generated by that 2 a.m. server crash.
It is an incredibly elegant and honestly ruthlessly efficient architecture. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to move beyond the orchestrational lab setting.
Yeah.
We need to ask what this actually means for you, the listener, in the real world. We've proven the mechanics of the Griot Engine, but how does this shift an actual career trajectory?
Well, the text delivers a very hard truth here, and it's one that I think a lot of brilliant, hardworking technical people struggle with. It states outright, the market does not buy raw code or raw intelligence. It buys clarity and strategic direction.
That is the defining reality of the modern corporate structure.
Yeah.
You can be the most gifted engineer, the fastest coder, the most dedicated operator on the planet.
Right.
But if you cannot translate your tactical work into clarity and strategic direction, your growth is inherently capped. You will always be viewed as a tool to be utilized rather than an architect to be followed.
And that is exactly how this WIE tradecraft physically separates a mid-level engineer from a senior executive.
Yes.
Let's go back to our scenario. Our engineer who fixed the SSL certificate didn't just close the ticket, they let the Griot Engine process it.
Right.
6 months later, it's time for their performance review. They don't walk into that meeting and say, I fixed a lot of bugs. They walk in with their externalized sovereign capital.
The shamanic ballad.
Exactly. They present a document that says, over the last 6 months, I captured 42 instances of operational friction. I translated those into 3 core architectural principles, which we deployed, resulting in a 14% reduction in system downtime and $85,000 in saved operational costs.
And this raises an important question about leverage. Because when an engineer presents that kind of synthesized data, they are no longer asking for a promotion based on effort.
No, not at all.
They are demanding a promotion based on undeniable mathematical market leverage. They have proven that their workflow actively generates compounding strategic wisdom for the entire enterprise.
Wow.
That is how you secure a $50,000 raise. That is how you move from the trenches to the boardroom.
You stop being the person who swings the hammer and you become the architect who designs the building.
Exactly.
You become the ultimate translator. You are literally manufacturing your own premium sovereign capital out of the garbage, out of the grease of your daily grind.
The lesson here, Whether you are preparing for a massive executive review tomorrow or just trying to survive a brutal on-call rotation tonight, is that you cannot simply do the work.
Right.
Doing the work is just the baseline expectation.
Right.
The premium value, the thing that separates you from everyone else, comes from capturing the intellectual property generated by your work, running it through narrative alchemy, and selling it back to the market.
So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this on your commute after a 12-hour shift fixing a broken API, this system is how you make sure your boss actually understands what you sacrificed last night.
Absolutely.
Those daily operational fires, those frustrating P0 alerts that wake you up, they aren't just annoyances. They are the raw fuel for your strategic roadmap. But they are only fuel if you have the right telemetry synthesis in place to capture them.
Right.
If you don't have a Griot engine catching that data, it really is just smoke blowing away in the wind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights that critical thinking in a technical career isn't just about finding the right answer to a specific code problem.
No.
It is about recognizing the latent value hidden inside the friction of your workflows. It is about having the discipline to scrape the notes off the counter, capture the grease from the kitchen, and turn it into something permanent and profitable.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started in the trenches, looking at the tragedy of lost operational energy. We walked through the exact mechanics of the intake funnel, forcing unstructured chaos into those three vital questions. What happened? What did it cost? What did we learn?
Yeah.
And then we watched that data move through the Vanguard translation layer, acting as that bilingual diplomat to convert machine code into C-suite metrics.
And from there, we explored the bi-directional power of the Obsidian Vault. We saw how the external path generates market weaponization through polished artifacts, while the internal path builds compounding team intelligence through autonomic cognitive adaptation.
It is a total paradigm shift from merely executing tasks to actively harvesting the strategic value of your execution.
It really is.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this entire time talking about how brilliant it is to build a system that automatically extracts your wisdom and translates it into executive-level strategy.
Right.
But think about the logical conclusion of that architecture for a second. We've talked about how this system magically routes raw data into the ZO1 source energy log. But think about the architecture behind that. If you were to build this today, what exactly would your specific data schema look like? What specific metadata tags and fields would you have to use in your own vault to guarantee that a chaotic technical event is successfully converted into actual sovereign capital?
That's a great question.
And taking it one step further, if software can automatically distill our operational friction into perfect corporate strategy, how long until the Griot Engine realizes it doesn't actually need us to solve the P0 fires in the first place? If you perfectly automate the extraction of your own wisdom, do you eventually automate yourself out of a job? Something to think about next time you close a ticket. Thank you for joining us. Keep capturing that operational wisdom, and we will see you next time.